You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the law, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Serve Somebody with Steve and Emily podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm your host, Steve Bradshaw, and as always, I'm joined by my good friend and co-host, Emily Hallavey. Emily, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm great. Tell us what's on your mind.
I have a couple things on my mind today.
Okay,
so first of all, this last weekend, there was the White House Correspondents' Dinner, and there was another act of political violence, which is horrible in any case. And of course, the left has automatically gone to, it was a false flag event. It was staged. And then the right is like, let's build the ballroom because we need the ballroom. And I just want to first of all, let's wind it all back. The left, you're starting to sound like Alex Jones here. And by the way, speaking of school shootings, if we had all that money to protect the leadership in this country, we should have all that money to protect our kids going to school every day. And there's so much, hundreds of school shootings every single year. And, and I'm really I don't like to be cynical, but after Sandy Hook, and we couldn't solve this issue with guns and people getting guns that shouldn't have guns, I just feel a sense of despair over this issue, and I hope that in the coming years we have some leadership with some moral fortitude who can get something done on this front, because having two kids in public school who both had multiple lockdown drills and events at their school that have led them to hide and get locked in their classrooms, that's not a call or a text that you ever want to get from your kid, right?
Right.
So anyway, that's my little rant on that thing.
Okay.
The other subject, I'm very passionate about my kids, as you well know, but my daughter plays lacrosse, and as I've said many times on our podcast already, this year we rolled into 2026 without health insurance. And when she said she wanted to play lacrosse, my first thought was knock on wood, let's not get an injury because that's going to cost us. And of course, it was the end of season fun pickup boys versus girls scrimmage game where she ends up rolling her foot and ending up in urgent care and then children's ER. But this story does have a little bit of good news because we went to an orthopedist yesterday who said it's something called a Liz Franck sprain. There's no tear, no CT scans or MRIs needed, so that saves us some money there. But we're paying this whole thing out of pocket, right? So really it's just time and healing that's going to get us to where we need to be. But, it still doesn't solve the problem of our healthcare crisis.
Right.
And when I look at the Republican ads for governor, I'm like, who are you talking to? Because they're all about transgender people. They're all about property taxes. My property taxes are $1,800 a year, right? And my healthcare premiums were going to go up to $2,000 a month. You're not talking to me with this property tax argument. You're not talking to middle-class Americans with this property tax argument. What you're doing effectively is, defunding our school system by doing, anyway. So I'm wondering who the Republican Party is talking to with these ads, if it really resonates with anybody other than millionaires. And anyway, those are the two issues that I'm really going to be looking for with our primary season and candidates for governor. And unfortunately, now my daughter has a volleyball career-ending injury. She won't be able to try out for volleyball next week, but I think our guest today knows a little something about career-ending injuries. But anyway, that's my rant. A little fired up today.
Well, first things first is she going to be okay?
She's going to be fine. Just time.
Okay.
She hurts all over now, and she's hobbling around. But
I get it. Okay.
yeah, she's in a boot.
Okay, well, that's no fun, but all right. Well, thank you for sharing that. So on the political violence thing, I'll just say this. I'm always extraordinarily sensitive to that. I never take it lightly when something like that happens, and my default position is not to go to some conspiracy theorist thing because, as I've said a couple of times on the show, when I was in office, there were a handful of occasions where there was extra police at my house because of whatever was coming up on our agenda. So I always take that very, very seriously. And with regard to, and just the one thing on guns, I mean, I was a soldier. I probably fired every single weapon, there is. I'm not anti-gun, but universal background check seems like a reasonable starting point.
Yeah.
Okay, but we won't belabor that. And then with regard to health care, this country needs to do a better job of ensuring its people health care. Buying health insurance should not be cost prohibitive. It's ridiculous that we're at a point where that is the case. And, as I sit here this minute, I don't have the full solution, but we need to do better than we're doing.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you for that. Appreciate you being fired up today, and we will just go for it. Today, we are very fortunate to have with us the former Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Mr. Geoff Duncan. Thank you so much for being here, sir. As we begin, is there anything you would like to say?
Yeah, grateful to be here. And the issues that you bring up are the same issues that we hear on the campaign trail. I think on the gun issue, Republicans know that they're completely wrong on this issue. And I think that's really one of the great areas of opportunity for us as Democrats. If a Democrat can win this governorship, is lead the charge. And I think a number of Republicans will co-sign legislation for universal background checks, red flag laws, and in-home safe storage laws. It makes all the sense in the world. 90% of Georgians agree with that type of policy making. And so we just need the courage to get it up to the floors of the Senate and the House and get it done. And I think the other part to it is you talk about, health care. Nobody in Washington, especially Donald Trump, is talking about health care. And nobody in Georgia, in the last legislative session, nobody did anything to lower health care costs. Yet you talk about $2,000, our family premium's almost $3,000 a month. And what makes it even worse is we're already almost in May, and our family's still paying out of pocket for our 3 boys when they go get x-rays.
Yeah.
Right? Because the insurance isn't even good insurance. It's expensive and not good.
It's cheaper for us. Sorry, I'm going to get back on my rant again, but it's cheaper for us to not have insurance. I mean, again, knock on wood, we're all healthy, but it's robbery.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Sorry to jump right into that.
Oh,
No,
not at all.
I love it.
Glad you did. So I'm sure we'll discuss that a little bit more as we get into it. So for our audience, Geoff Duncan served as the Republican Lieutenant Governor of Georgia from 2019 to 2023. And he was a member of the Georgia House of Representatives from 2023 to 2017. He's also been a successful businessman and a professional baseball player. And in August of 2025, he upended Georgia's political dynamic by announcing his switch to the Democratic Party, and further shook up the political landscape in September of 2025 by announcing his candidacy for governor. We really appreciate him for taking time off of the campaign trail to be with us, especially at this stage of the campaign in that early voting has already started in Georgia. So, sir, we thank you for being here. So let's just start with this. For the benefit of our audience, tell us what the Lieutenant Governor of Georgia does.
Well, the Lieutenant Governor is the President of the Senate, and that really serves as a role that the rules are defined by the actual Senate. So they have a committee on assignments, and you coordinate the everyday session. So 40 legislative days out of the year is really, really busy, making sure you shepherd. You don't get to vote yes or no on any of the policies, even in a tie, which catches a lot of folks off guard. You don't get to make every final decision. There's normally committees and groups of senators that kind of work together to make a lot of those final decisions as far as where legislation's assigned, who sits on what committees and whatnot. But you certainly do have a platform to express your opinions.
Okay, excellent. So, why do you want to be governor of Georgia?
Yeah, I want to be governor because I think, Georgia is in a good position, but in order to get to a great position, we've got to take some really serious moves. We've got to expand Medicaid so that we don't ever send somebody to the hospital without health insurance. We do need to pass common sense gun legislation. We need to build economic development opportunities for all 159 counties. And in summary, 11 million Georgians need to experience the tailwinds of the state government, not just a few million. I think that's one of the roles I really take seriously as governor is I won't just work for the people that voted for me. I'll work for all 11 million Georgians. I'll reach into those communities that need public education improvements, that need to have better funding for public schools and transit systems in their metro areas, that want to have stronger public safety networks, that want to have affordable housing. For me, this has been a journey that you obviously mentioned. I used to be a Republican, and it's really been an out loud process for the last 6 years. Yes, I stood up to Donald Trump when it mattered the most, but I also spoke at the DNC, also campaigned with Kamala Harris in multiple swing states. Of course, I switched parties, but I've also spoken out on a number of issues with op-eds that are out there. And so for me, this is about really wrapping my hands around a lot of the issues that Republicans just don't want to face up to and don't have the political courage to do the right thing. And I just, at the risk of switching parties, it's a much better fit for me. I have this awesome toolkit now. It's not perfect, but it's a really much improved toolkit that I can reach into to help different communities and different individuals.
Okay, excellent. So as you know, no Democrat has been elected governor of Georgia since 1998. So what's different about this year?
Yeah, that's one of the reminders I kind of kick off my stump speech with. It's been nearly 30 years since a Republican or Democrats won the governor's race. Roy Barnes, 1998, got sworn in, and the reasons are pretty simple. It's you got to win more than the base to win the governorship in Georgia, and I knew that from day one, and I'm building that coalition of Democrats, independents, and even this batch of disgusted Republicans that are tired of it. They're done. They're ready to move on from Donald Trump and the MAGA-branded Republican Party. And so that coalition is going to be big enough to not just win a primary, but to actually win the general election in November. And, I remind every room I walk into, a second-place trophy is not going to solve anybody's problems. If Burt Jones or anybody else wins this Republican primary and then ultimately goes on and wins the governorship, Donald Trump will by default be our governor. Linda McMahon will run our public schools. Burt Jones hosted her a few weeks ago down here in Georgia. National Guard troops will be in our streets because Donald Trump and those will coordinate, and the list goes on and on. So winning has to be the number one priority for us Democrats.
So you've mentioned a few issues, guns, healthcare. What do you see are the biggest issues facing our state right now, and how would you approach them?
I think affordability is a crisis for everybody. Whether you own a business or live in check to check or somewhere in between, affordability is hammering families and individuals. And so for me, I want to start by taking 10% of our state's rainy day fund, which sits at $17 billion, and I want to take 10%, $1.7 billion, and put it in what I'm calling a jumpstart fund to start wrapping around the axle of poverty, trying to lower child care costs for those single parents that can't go back to work because they can't afford child care. We can better invest in the CAPS program. The program's already there. The structure's already there. Just needs more dollars. We need to better invest in the TANF program, which helps meet families and individuals that have temporary needs, like a power bill that they need help with for a few months, or a ride to work. Also think we need to scale up affordable housing programs. Mayor Dickens and Mayor Van Johnson in Savannah and others around the state have done a great job of building efficient, effective, affordable housing programs. Instead of the state trying to recreate the wheel, let's go give them the resources they need to be successful. And also use some of those dollars to expand Medicaid. I think enough's enough, and even Republicans know that they need to expand Medicaid. And so affordability and healthcare are those two big issues that we've got to make sure that we get right. It's not only a healthcare tailwind, it's not only an affordable housing and affordable lifestyle mantra, but it's also an economic development opportunity for Georgians to be able to experience the tailwinds of having health insurance and being able to have a more affordable lifestyle as they go forward.
Yeah, it doesn't seem right that the state has such a big surplus and yet Georgians are still crippled under affordability issues.
Yeah, and it shouldn't just be used to just give tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires like Donald Trump continues to make the mantra of the Republican Party and the MAGA world. Right? It's time to start investing in Georgians. It's not a handout, it's an investment into these individuals so they can get back up on their feet, and start with the rest of their life. There should never be somebody going to work, working full time, that's still trying to live in the back of a car or raising a family, surfing on a different couch every night of the week because that's the only way that they can put a roof over their heads. That just shouldn't happen.
Yeah. Okay, so before you face a Republican in the general, you've got to get through the primary. Why should Democrats nominate you? And do you think Republicans are going to pull a Democratic ballot to vote for you?
So I think Democrats, and this is their words, not mine, are supporting me. We've got endorsements coming in from all over the place, labor unions, James Woodall, the NAACP past president, Georgia Men for Democracy Now!, Senator Donzella James, Senator Freddie Powell Sims, and the list goes on. They're supporting me for a couple of reasons. One, I think they realize that they know my heart. It's been an out loud journey that I've been living for a number of years. This isn't just a Johnny come lately. It's really been partnering with Democrats on passing hate crimes legislation, standing up to a president, doing the work. But I think the winnability argument is real, right? Democrats are ready to win, and this second place trophy stuff is enough. And so I think that's one reason is I definitely put us in the best position because I am building that coalition big enough to win at general. But I think two, I show up day one ready to work. I don't need a tutorial on what the budget looks like. I understand how to negotiate with the legislature day one. Also understand how every state agency works and how we can make improvements and utilize technologies and efficiencies and funding needs. So I show up day one ready to go tackle the problems that matter most.
Mm-hmm. And do you think that Republicans will pull a Democratic ballot in the primary?
I think there's going to be some out there that pull a Democratic primary in the ballot for a number of reasons. One, because maybe they see my willingness to really reach into the bucket of issues and start having some solutions. I think some of them are so disgusted and embarrassed of Donald Trump that they're just done with the Republican Party as a whole. But I do think by the time we get to November, I think there's going to be this overwhelming avalanche of Republicans that are jumping ship and voting for John Ossoff and voting for Geoff Duncan and voting for Democratic state senators and state representatives across the state. Because, I mean, when we go to these forums, Republicans are invited to most of them. They don't show up because they don't want to have a microphone in a crowd to have to make excuses for Donald Trump. I mean, who can explain tariffs? Who can explain $4.50 gas prices? Who can explain weaponizing the Department of Justice and using ICE as a hateful group that's literally shooting people in the streets? I mean, the list goes on. They don't want to explain it, but they'll have to do that in November.
Right. So current polling suggests that Mayor Bottoms has a substantial lead and that yourself, Mike Thurmond, and Jason Estevez are all kind of stacked up there, kind of vying for second place. So my questions are, do you believe that polling? Does that track with your internal polling? And if that's all true, how do you plan to overcome that?
Well, certainly, I mean, all the polling suggests that Mayor Bottoms has a lead, and she certainly has name ID and whatnot that's working in her favor. And the rest of us are fighting for second place to get to the runoff. And I do think I statistically see an advantage showing up in some of our internal polling showing us that we have a solid second place. But we're running through the tape. We're trying to make sure everybody sees our effort and understands our voice, understands our mission and our plans to march forward. And look, this is always going to be a two-step process in Georgia. Nobody ever wins these statewide races without having a runoff, and it'll be a four-week sprint. And we'll both have to put our resumes on display and talk about the past. I've got to walk into rooms and talk about being a Republican in the past, and I've certainly been able to do that. I've been able to talk about important issues like the heartbeat bill, which I obviously feel like the women deserve the right to choose after seeing that play out at the state capitol and seeing, my mistake was to think that room full of state senators knew better than millions of women. And when you started to hear those complicated medical stories and personal situations, it became abundantly obvious that women deserve the right to choose between themselves and their faith and their family and their physicians. So I've been having those honest conversations about my past. And I think Georgians, and specifically Democrats, aren't asking me, why'd you used to be a Republican? They're asking me, how do we win? How do we lock arms? How do we get this done? And how do we win in November?
Okay, very good. So if you're elected, assuming there isn't a blue wave that sweeps across the entire state, you will probably be dealing with a Republican-controlled General Assembly. So how do you intend to navigate that dynamic in order to get your agenda passed?
I've got a career as a state representative and as lieutenant governor of working across the aisle. I think the folks at the Capitol who've worked with me in the past, I think that's what speaks to why so many Democratic elected officials have endorsed me and coming on board, because they've seen my heart in the past. I've worked in those Democratic caucus meetings and Republican caucus meetings. I know those individuals in the Republican Party that do have those districts and do have a heart to do the right thing. I know that they've faced political courage challenges in the past on some of these issues, but I know who they are. I've built relationships with them in the past, and I look to build those coalitions big enough to get common sense gun legislation passed, to get Medicaid expanded, to repeal the heartbeat bill, working with them in conjunction with Democrats to get the right thing across the finish line. And that's really been the story of my political career, has been trying to build bridges, and I'll continue to do that. And how does that start? It starts by having dinner at the governor's mansion with Democrats and Republicans and telling them to invite their spouses, getting to know their kids' names, getting to know their districts really well, working for compromise, working for consensus. That's how we're actually going to get real stuff done, because I think most Georgians are tired of watching us elect people, even on the national level, elect people that are really good at pulling pins and throwing grenades at the other team to just win an election. But then they show up as damaged goods. They can't get anything done because they've demonized the other side so badly that they can't actually get anything done. And so the next thing to accomplish is winning another election. And therefore, another year goes by without progress.
So speaking of progress, how would you like to see Georgia's surplus allocated if you're in the position of governor?
Well, I think part of it is using it for my Jumpstart Fund. I think we've got to make sure that we, wrap our hands around the axle of poverty and make that $1.7 billion investment. So that's part of it. Part of it is I think we need to make sure that we invest more in public education. 95% of kids, including mine, are going to be educated at public schools across our state. It's literally the rising tide that lifts all boats. But we're kind of saddled with this 42-year-old QBE funding formula that's inefficient and ineffective, doesn't meet the times, doesn't even wait for poverty. And so I think we need to better fund that our public education program and continue to look for strategic investments around economic development in all communities. But look, Georgia's best days are still in front of us. I want all 11 million Georgians to wake up and feel that's the story, not just a few million. I want folks in all parts of the state to wake up and say, you know what, if I go put in an honest day's work, I can feed my family, I can put away some money, I can think about retirement. I think about labor unions as being part of that story, right? To see them come in and support us and talk about apprenticeship programs in high schools, talk about apprenticeship programs in the communities after kids are graduating from high school, thinking about career-oriented, benefits-based programs, wage growth. Those are really great opportunities for all Georgians to start to experience our better days.
Yeah. Well, I want to dig in a little bit on this transition from being a Republican to a Democrat, because I've heard some of your debates, and like from a general perspective, you're saying, you've been out loud about all of this, but I'm curious to know, like, was there a catalyst? Was there like a moment, an aha moment where you were like, this is just not working for me anymore? What was that?
So I literally get this question every night. Folks just want to know, like, what was that moment in time? What was that one particular issue? And it really opens up the opportunity for me to talk about the journey, because it's truly been a journey. And it started in 2013 when I got sworn in as a state representative. I walked in the room, and within minutes, you could realize there was two kind of factions. There was those that wanted to pick fights. There was those that wanted to solve problems, and they just kind of grouped together. And it was like, I don't want to pick fights. I didn't put my life on hold and drive 40 miles to the Capitol every day and walk away from going to some of my kids' games and my job. I want to go solve problems. And so that was the first step in the right direction. The second was just quite honestly, it's been a faith journey for me. I couldn't square my faith with demonizing folks in and around poverty. I couldn't figure out ways why it made sense to not look at opportunities, even though we had the money, to not expand Medicaid and give access to people with health insurance. There was, love my neighbor started to look like it had asterisk marks next to it as a Republican, right? If my neighbor didn't look like me, act like me, love like me, talk like me, or even vote like me, the Republican Party kind of created a framework not to love your neighbor, and I just didn't feel like that made sense anymore in my life. And so, yes, I stood up to Donald Trump, and yes, I, hopefully will be remembered for doing the right thing in the 2020 election. But it didn't stop there. Campaigning with Kamala Harris made all the sense in the world. Writing those opinion columns and taking the heat for doing the right thing made all the sense in the world. Standing up for passing hate crimes legislation made all the sense in the world. And so for me, it's really been this journey, and I literally wake up with a refreshed attitude towards policymaking like I've never had before. I feel like I'm not saddled with having to carry anybody's water other than the 11 million Georgians.
So what has been the hardest part about your transition from being a Republican to a Democrat?
Yeah, I think it's been hard on our family. It truly has. I mean, look, when you run for office and you're in the public eye and you're on national television day after day after day and you're speaking at the DNC and the sitting president is tweeting at you and creating havoc, we literally have gotten death threats. We've literally had to have state troopers at our house. We've literally couldn't send the kids to school sometimes because they're getting picked on. We have neighbors that won't look at us or wave at us anymore. I mean, it's
wow.
it's rough stuff. I mean, so for me, the hardest part is watching my family have to go through this journey. And when we switched parties, there was certainly a lot of and continued. There's some hateful things that people are willing to do and say, whether it be in person or online. But one, I'm grateful for a family that is fully supportive of it. My wife and kids couldn't be any more supportive of the efforts of not only switching parties and standing up to Donald Trump, but running as a proud Democrat, watching them embrace that. And also watching folks across Georgia that I'd never met before that are willing to come up and shake my hand or give me words of encouragement along the way, or even just give me a hug. Say, thank you for doing the right thing. Thank you for being in this race. Thank you for having a real conversation. Thank you for being an honest umpire. Thank you for having real discussions around real policies that matter. That's the encouragement that kind of keeps me driving.
Yeah. Were you raised Republican or Democrat?
Republican, right? Yeah. I mean, I grew up in a Republican household. Just about every community I ever lived in was a heavy Republican majority, including when I first ran for state house. In Forsyth County, my district was 90-10 Republican at the time. And so, there was just this, kind of process of once I got to the Capitol of being around people like Dewey McClain, who was my seatmate, Democrat from Gwinnett County, which just a tremendous friend and ally. And my wife actually found a picture yesterday of he was my seatmate, and he didn't have any family one year when he got sworn in, and so one of my sons held the Bible for him while Dewey put his hand on the Bible. And I sent it to Dewey, and I said, great picture here. And he goes, I cannot believe how big Ryder is now because he's grown. He's now 15.
What about your wife? Was she raised Republican?
Yeah, same thing. We went to high school together, and she kind of grew up in the same household, and so we've been on this journey together. And it's really, like I mentioned earlier, it's been a faith journey. I try not to, quote Bible verses and be over the top. I try to, let my faith speak with my actions, and part of that is with the policies that I'm able to talk about and champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not a transition, especially in this political environment that you enter into cavalierly. But I'm curious, you talked about some of the hardships of it, but have there been any surprises along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I was hopeful that Democrats would be very receptive to this journey and this campaign. And, it was kind of this notion, if you build it, they will come, was the hope. And it's truly happened. I mean, watching Democrats from literally all over the state flock to the campaign, I think it's great to see, the diversity that has shown up around our campaign. I think the opportunities to really have real discussions and paint a real picture of hope for individuals all across the state has truly been, it's been so rewarding. And so I think the momentum behind us, folks said we couldn't raise the money, we couldn't get the endorsements, and we couldn't climb in the polls to be relevant. And all of that's happening at real time. I think that's the fun part of this campaign. And of course, we're down to just a few weeks left till Election Day. And I think we're definitely seen as running through the finish line.
Yeah. Well, a lot of the women that I talk to are worried about your authenticity around the heartbeat bill and being pro-choice now. And that's definitely not something that a person comes to just overnight, right? Like you go from being pro-life to pro-choice overnight. So I'm curious again, was there a moment after you signed that legislation that you realized that you made a mistake?
Yeah, well, one, I didn't sign it. The governor signs all legislation.
Yes,
but I was the lieutenant governor on the bill. I think the personal weight on my shoulders really started when Roe got overturned, and those incredibly difficult medical scenarios and those deep-rooted personal issues started showing up, and I started reading them in detail, and I started kind of understanding the complexities of those decisions that those women made. Was that moment in time where I realized the mistake was a serious mistake was made. And that was a transition for me of really starting to understand what is the right thing to do here. And the right thing is to know, first and foremost, everybody has a different slight opinion of abortion in their own personal context and lens. And we should never legislate. A legislator who's never met or will never meet that woman in that moment where she's making the most difficult decision of her life should have ultimate say-so in that decision. And so for me, every room I've walked into, I've made that promise that I will, A, sign the executive order that clarifies doctors can practice medicine without fear of prosecution. because that's essential. And then 2, I'll introduce the legislation through my floor leaders to repeal the 6-week ban and do the right thing. And I think even Republican legislators know that answer is the right answer. And I think they'll join us on this journey and they'll co-sign the legislation, and we'll shepherd this through, not in a disrespectful way, but in a meaningful way that will lead the charge and I think be a good example to the rest of the country.
Yeah, I heard some rumors coming out of the Georgia legislature that night that it ended up passing, that there were a lot of Republicans on board to not vote for it, but because Renita Shannon got up and basically did a filibuster speech on the floor, that just soured all the Republican hope of getting people to not vote for it, and it became such a huge partisan issue that they had to. Is that your recollection?
That was in the House.
Yeah.
The Senate had a different conversation. One of the things that I met with Democrats and Republicans before that, I wanted to maintain the decorum. I wanted to have a respectful conversation. I'm grateful for the state senators on both sides of the aisle that did respect those wishes and had a legitimate conversation. But at the end of the day, the bill passed, and ultimately it was a mistake. And, look, I don't just want to talk about it being a mistake. I want to be a champion for fixing it.
Yeah.
And that's the passion that I come to this issue with. There's no excuses. I didn't vote, hit the wrong button. I didn't, read the wrong memo. I simply was wrong, and I look forward to being part of the solution to being right. Interesting story that's popped up on the campaign trail. This retired judge came up to me and my wife at a dinner one night, and he said the most important decisions now that he's retired, or most memorable, were the ones that he reversed himself on, because he took the time to go re-understand the facts and reanalyze the issues, but then had the humility to stand up in front of a courtroom and say, I made a mistake. I was wrong. And that really resonates with me. It really resonates with the passion and the memory that's in me to want to get this right.
And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate most out of your campaign. And I don't think it's something that politicians generally are good at doing, is admitting when they're wrong. But even as a parent, I'll yell at my kids over something or another, and then when I reflect on it, I always go back to them and say, I'm really sorry. I just was in the moment, heated, and I shouldn't have done that. I think it's a lost art, being able to sincerely apologize.
And look, that's just part of my faith journey, right? That's part of my story, and something that I've had to get better at doing. And I think a huge issue for me was looking at my kids when I was watching the Republican Party start to unravel and watching those exact positions really be at odds with my spirit. I realized that I didn't want to be a hypocrite to my kids. I didn't want to be a liar. I wanted to be authentic, and watching their dad say out loud that I got something wrong, hopefully is a good example for them.
Yeah.
Well, there's an axiom that I learned a long time ago, probably during my Army days, which is simply, when you mess up, fess up.
And the quicker you do it, the quicker things get back on track.
Absolutely. So, and there's no dishonor in admitting when you're wrong, because none of us is perfect in every instance.
My biggest regret now is that I didn't do it sooner.
Yeah,
but
understood.
I can't change that.
Understood. Well, we're going to diverge a little bit. As I said during the intro, you played professional baseball, and I'm wondering, as a professional athlete, how that experience impacted your philosophy, your worldview, your approach to life.
Yeah, baseball is such a big part of my story. Now that I have gray hair, not many people ask me about it. My kids are tired of hearing every baseball story that I've told a million times to them, but it was such a huge part of my story, right? As a kid growing up, I lived in 7 states and moved here in high school to Georgia, but it was my way to meet new friends, was to be the best athlete on the field. So I was driven to be good and successful at sports, and so I was a high school quarterback and a pitcher. And but I didn't know I was going to be a Division I college pitcher. And one night I threw a no-hitter with 17 strikeouts, and Georgia Tech was there to watch somebody else play. And they ended up offering me a scholarship to come play at Georgia Tech. And then I eventually got drafted by the Marlins and spent 6 years in the minor leagues, and loved almost every moment of it. Payday was always a little rough. That's what my wife reminds me of. We got married right out of the chute after I got drafted. But the things that I've taken away from baseball was the grit and tenacity it takes to be successful, and the ability to take defeat and learn from it, the ability to work hard and play the long game. Right? If you're in the weight room every day, or if you're throwing bullpens every day, or you're studying pitching charts, it's not necessarily going to help you that day, but it allows you to be successful long term. And the grit and tenacity to pick yourself up truly has played out in my not only campaigning process, but also governing process. You got to have grit and tenacity to get people to buy in, to build that consensus that sometimes takes years to get somebody on board. And so, and the value of hard work is something that has never left me, right? I was never one of those extremely physically gifted individuals. I was always an overachiever on every team I played on. And so knowing that hard work really truly does make the difference is something that I've carried with me in my business career, that my wife and I have been able to be successful in several settings, and then now in politics.
Well, I agree that one of the most important lessons any of us can learn is how to get up after we've been knocked down.
Oh, yeah.
So, okay, I'll stick with baseball a little bit.
Oh, I love it.
You're a pitcher. Tell me what your best pitch was. What was your go-to pitch?
So my kids will laugh at this. I always ask every kid that I've coached like 18 baseball teams, all my kids' teams. I love it. I always ask the kids day one, what's the best pitch in baseball? And they'll all say fastball, slider, changeup. Best pitch in baseball is strike one.
Yeah.
If you throw strike one, you can turn a 300 hitter into a 200 hitter with one pitch. So strike one, throwing lots of strikes makes sense. So everybody gets drafted on their fastball, right? And I had a really good fastball. I was probably, low 90s, and back in those days, I guess that was good. In today's day, you got to throw 100 to be successful. But I threw in the low 90s. But I quickly realized once I got to professional baseball that I was going to have to figure out a better pitch than just a low 90s fastball. So I developed a slider, and that became my go-to out pitch. It was pretty impressive. I certainly couldn't have hit it if I was pitching to myself.
All right, very good.
But you did have a career-ending injury, right?
I did. I ran out of bullets, as my wife says. Shoulder surgery, reconstructive shoulder surgery. Went and rehabbed the whole off season. Went back to spring training. Thought I could get through it. I was convinced the doctor must have left a scalpel on the back of my shoulder because it was still sore. And eventually got released by the Marlins. But I had a great career. I'll never forget the day I got released. Kind of knew it was coming. It was towards the tail end of spring training. And I remember sitting there thinking when they said, hey, Geoff, you've been a great player in our system. Thank you so much for your time, but we're going to have to part ways with you. I wasn't disappointed. I was like, I don't have to run today.
Oh, gosh.
That was my first thought for like 10 minutes. I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? I'm no longer a professional baseball player. So interesting story. I went home and started literally 2 weeks later, Brooke and I started our first business.
Oh, wow.
Out of our living room. And I didn't know if it was going to be a success. So as a backup plan, I literally kept my arm in shape. I would throw bullpens to my father-in-law every couple of days in case it didn't get off the ground and I wasn't able to earn a paycheck. I was going to be able to go back to playing baseball with another team. And fortunately for me and the rest of my family, our business took off.
Okay.
What was the business that you started?
It was a marketing business.
Oh, okay. My son plays baseball. He's 13. He's a catcher and sometimes pitcher, but he loves it. And we're a baseball family.
Yeah,
for sure.
all three of my kids have played travel baseball. My oldest is now in law school, but he ended up becoming a great golfer. He's a scratch golfer.
Oh, good.
So he played that in high school. My middle one played baseball all the way through high school and could have played in college, but decided to go play football at Georgia Tech. So he's played the last 2 seasons of football. And our youngest is as a freshman in high school at Lambert, and he plays on the golf team and on the football team.
Yeah. My son's definitely he's been out golfing with Steve before.
Yes.
It's a nice transition, especially when you already have a busy schedule.
Yeah, for sure.
And then my little brother, he played baseball at Decatur High School, was a pitcher, went to Birmingham Southern and pitched his college
I got
career.
recruited by Birmingham Southern.
Oh, you did,
Yeah.
but you didn't go.
I didn't go. I went to Georgia Tech.
Okay, nice. Well, you have stated a desire to better love thy neighbor through public policy. So please, explain how that actually functions in real life.
Yeah, I think you got to start by loving your neighbor by not discriminating against them and not talking in any sort of discriminatory tones. I think one of the most unconscionable acts that Donald Trump does is continues to have outright racist attacks. Uses DEI as a weapon of destruction instead of an opportunity to continue to make progress in the right direction. I think the other communities that him and other folks in the MAGA brand of the Republican Party demonize and politicize those issues. So I think loving your neighbor starts there, looking for opportunities to protect all and to give all access to equal opportunities. But I also think the leaders that I follow in my life that are the strongest players in my life are the ones that lead by example. And so as governor, I promise every room I walk into, I'll have the most diverse governor's administration and state government of any governor in the history of the state. And it's not because I want to check a box. It's because I want to gain perspective. I want folks from all walks of life, from all communities of Georgia to show up in those conference rooms to make those big decisions, whether it be around transportation, whether it be around education, whether it be around public health, you name it. I want to have diverse opinions around the table. And so for me, it's a huge priority. And I think we have an opportunity to lead by example.
That's great. Who are your political heroes?
My political heroes, early when I was a young kid, I think the first president on the scene was Ronald Reagan. So I just always was caught how he could communicate. He could make you feel good. I didn't know any of the policies he was talking about, but I always felt like he was a crisp, clean communicator. And I think also as I started to get older and started my career, and then also when I was a young legislator, I always respected Barack Obama. I respected how he was able to just stay so close to his family, right? And really live this life of, yes, being the leader of the free world, but also really laying out his policies and his ability to I think build consensus around tough issues. And certainly as a former Republican, the policies I was curious about, I didn't understand enough about, but his ability to maintain that strength of his family, I think, was a huge role model for me as I started to step into political life. And you can't put your wife. I'm certainly not willing and able to put my wife and kids in a different box, right? I wake up. I was in carpool line first thing this morning, making sure I got my kids to school on time.
That's great.
And we'll probably have to figure out how to get them dinner tonight when Brooke and I are coming back from an event.
Yeah.
So I had an interesting conversation with a friend of mine recently, former Democratic member of the General Assembly. And she shared with me that she's inclined to support you. And she shared with me why. She said, to her, it seems like you want to beat the Republicans more than the other Democrats do. So I'm wondering, what do you think of that assessment? And if so, if that is in fact your assessment, explain that.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the story. I mean, I definitely want to win, and I want to win for all 11 million Georgians. And look, I've been behind enemy lines on all these issues. I know these talking points that have run out of steam. I understand the soft districts. I understand the failing argument against expanding Medicaid. I understand the arguments against supporting Donald Trump and MAGA and those state senators and state representatives. But yeah, I want to win, and I think Republicans know that, right? In listening to them and their pundits, we did a debate on TV the other night, and the political strategist afterwards, Republicans on multiple fronts have said, I'm kind of their worst nightmare. Right? I show up in this general election and I capture the attention of that middle, and even grab those disgusted Republicans and help them join the journey. And by the way, it's not just for me. Somebody's going to come in and vote for John Ossoff. They're going to vote for Geoff Duncan. They're going to vote for state reps and state senators and even some of these statewide elected officials. They really change the tide. But here's what I tell everybody. It's not going to be just enough for us Democrats to win this election cycle, right? We certainly have a healthy tailwind, and part of that's because Donald Trump's the worst decision this country's ever made. And people are waking up and realizing it. But it's not just enough to win an election. We've got to govern well, right? If we want to stop this vicious cycle of back and forth, Democrats, then Republicans, Democrats, then Republicans, we've got to be the adults in the room and govern really, really well. Can't take the pendulum and swing it so far one way just because we can for 2 years or 4 years.
Right.
We got to take control of the state government and go meet people's needs, have real conversations, and literally build consensus around every issue.
So you used the term disgusted Republicans a few times. How big a universe do you think that is?
I think it's pretty big and getting bigger by the hour, right? As people are filling up with gas and not able to explain. Farmers in South Georgia, who were probably a big part of Donald Trump's win in 2024, are now being threatened with losing their farms because they can't sell crops because of these tariffs. They're picking up their newspapers in rural communities and seeing that the rural hospital once again is being threatened to close. 20-something-year-olds are worried about affordability issues again because they're graduated with debt from college and can't still afford to live anywhere other than with their college roommates. Seniors are being faced with the fact that their living costs are out of control. They never planned for $4.50 gas or $250 groceries. So I think this audience of disgusted Republicans is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. I think back in the napkin math, there's 35% of Republicans that are probably unapproachable, that they'll literally walk off a cliff for Donald Trump. And that's exactly where he's walking them to, fiscally, socially, politically, you name it. But I think the rest of them are malleable enough to really start moving their feet.
Okay, interesting. So how would you describe your current relationship with Governor Kemp?
I'm certainly respectful of Governor Kemp. We worked really well together for 4 years. I think none of us campaigned on being really good at managing a state during a pandemic, yet I think we did good. I think there's certainly some things that we could have done better, but we really worked well there. When the civil unrest came across our state, I think we really worked grateful for being able to pass the Less Crimes Act and him signing it, which was law enforcement strategic support. When there was whispers of defund the police, which made no sense in the world in any community, we were able to create a multi-million-dollar tax credit program. And of course, I'm grateful for those that stood up against Donald Trump when he tried to steal the 2020 election. But look, we're on different sides of the aisle. I don't think Donald Trump is literally doing anything that's good at this point. I mean, maybe I'm missing something, but at this point, I think he's taking our country in the wrong direction. I'm willing to stand up and say that out loud. I'm willing to say that all of these ICE raids are, as governor, I won't use any state resources to amplify those ICE raids. If Donald Trump wants to send the National Guard troops here solely to try to create a division, I'll use the court system to stand up to that. And so I do think there's differences.
Understood.
Yeah, it is interesting just looking at who was leading Georgia at the time during the 2020 election and seeing the fortitude of yourself and Kemp and Raffensperger and Sterling and everybody who were Republicans who stood up to
I think we stood up because we were Americans, right? I mean, democracy was literally in the balance in that moment in time. And I could feel that. I knew that. And that's why literally within hours of the first whispers of Trump trying to act like the election was rigged, I took to the camera because I was trying to squelch I didn't want the train to leave the station. But unfortunately, it did. When a sitting president's willing to lie and cheat and try to steal an election, I mean, it's hard to push back. But, I didn't view anything through the lens of partisanship during that period of time. I viewed it through the lens of democracy. Mm-hmm. And I still think that's in the balance now. When we talk about these 2020 ballots being confiscated by the FBI raid in Fulton County, I mean, that has nothing to do with 2020. That has everything to do with sowing seeds of doubt on this upcoming midterm election. If Republicans wanted to win, then just put better policies forward. Tell everybody in the world that you don't think Donald Trump makes sense. But instead, Donald Trump and his cronies are trying to shape the outcome of an election, and that's wrong. We should shape the outcome of an election by earning people's respect and earning their vote and having them show up and vote for you on Election Day.
Yeah. Well, turning to something more fun.
All right, let's do it.
You've mentioned your family a lot, so tell us more about your family.
So met my wife, Brooke, my senior year in high school. I was a quarterback on the football team, and she was the trainer. And I needed to run to the sidelines to grab a Band-Aid or something, and the rest is history. Although she didn't know I was getting into politics eventually, so maybe she would have gone the other way when I asked her to prom. But she's been an amazing partner through so many different phases of life, through baseball, through business, through politics. We got 3 awesome kids. Our oldest, as I said earlier, is 24. He's in law school. Went to the University of Georgia undergrad, and now he's at University of Florida Law.
Oh, nice. Go Gators.
Yeah, all right. He's conflicted, right, on during football season. My middle one goes to Georgia Tech. He's a finance major, and he's getting ready to graduate and launch his career. And our youngest is in high school and he's he's the character in the family. He's got the big personality.
Nice. And they all play baseball.
They did at various phases in their life. Parker's a golf. They're all 3 golfers. They're really good golfers. But Parker is the golfer in the family. He's got the lowest. He's a scratch golfer, and they're all jealous.
Yeah.
Baylor is.
As am I.
As am I. But I mean, look, it's been so much fun raising those kids and coaching them in their teams. And really, our closest friends are not anybody in politics. Our closest friends are folks that are families that we coached with or our kids played with or, kind of live in the neighborhood. Those are the folks that we try to go out to dinner with the most outside of politics.
Yeah, it's when the kids are little, I was never I was very much into politics when the kids were little because they didn't have their own life, right? They'd go to school, whatever, and then we could drag them wherever. And now that the kids are older, my kids are 16 and 13, it's like, I just want to enjoy every single last moment I have with them. And I know it's got to be hard running a statewide campaign with 3 kids and, a loving home. That's got to be a challenge.
It is. But, at the end of the day, they're great teammates on this journey, and they've been so supportive, and we're doing this together. And it's grateful for the tailwind. Funny story about coaching. So I've coached all these kids' teams, and I, of course, never talk politics. Don't even think about politics when I step on the field. That's my release. But the best job that I had of coaching was I was the offensive coordinator for a couple of years on our son's football teams. That was the best call in the plays. But it would be great. Kids would come to practice, and they'd say, "Coach Geoff, I think I saw you on TV today. Is that you? What do you do?"
Yeah.
And I was like, it's another story. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Okay, so we always talk about our favorite movies. One of the movies that I haven't brought up is Singing in the Rain is one of my favorite movies, which after the rain finally came last night, I was singing in the rain this morning with my dog. Anyway, I'm curious to know if you have a favorite movie.
Yeah, so my wife probably wishes I was more of a movie guy than I am. She loves it. So she's actually talked me into doing the streaming stuff. So we've got the Netflix series that we're watching and whatnot. But I would say my favorite movie of all time is probably, and this is not going to be a surprise, Bull Durham.
Okay. I was going to say The Natural. I was going to guess The Natural, but Bull Durham's another one.
That's too good. Bull Durham, life on the road as a minor leaguer is real. I've ridden probably 1 million miles on a bus. I've been in those cruddy clubhouses. I've gotten booed by fans. I've had interesting teammates. Yeah, that's probably the most. And plus, for some reason, I used to play on the bus all the time. I was like, guys, why are we watching a movie about the minor leagues? We already know the minor leagues.
Right.
Let's watch something about, let's watch Major League.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, wow.
Exactly. So what are you streaming right now? What shows are you watching?
We're multiple seasons behind on Suits.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
We're caught up on Landman.
Okay.
Yep, Landman's good.
And we just watched The Chosen.
I don't know that one.
It's a story about the disciples and Jesus, and so we're caught up on The Chosen. It was riveting.
Okay. Well, speaking of faith, what denomination are you?
We go to North Point Church, is a non-denominational church, and it's really been a big part of our story. Andy Stanley has done a great job of just feeding us when we walk in, like everybody else in there. And just my job is to figure out how to follow Jesus. That's just been the best thing that I feel like has kept my faith on track. And so that's my mission every day. And I often say my faith is a journey. Some days it burns me, some days it warms me up, but I'm willing to accept either.
Mm-hmm. So Andy Stanley used to come on after SNL every Saturday night, right?
I never stayed up that late, but I do remember hearing that.
And there would be times where I would fall asleep during SNL, and I'd wake up, and there would be Andy Stanley, and he's riveting. And I'm not practicing, but I really enjoyed some of his messages. And he definitely also seemed, and maybe I'm just inferring here, but he seemed like he was speaking against the MAGAverse.
Well, I don't want to put those words in his mouth. I just think he does a really good job of unpacking how to love your neighbor every Sunday. And that to me is the most inviting. The other part to the story about North Point, and other churches do this too, is they really emphasize small groups. And small groups have been a huge part of Brooke and I's story, and we've for years have been in a couple small group. And every couple of years it changes and you switch. But it's really been a really good opportunity to be with other married couples kind of in that same phase of life, to just talk about the stresses and strains of raising a family and kind of staying connected and dealing with life as it comes at you. And it's, I think the saying is life is better served in circles instead of rows, which kind of signifies Sundays versus Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Right now, our current small group is on Monday nights. I haven't been there enough because I've been on the campaign trail. But
right, understood. All right. Well, you mentioned your wife several times, so this next question is not intended to
How long we've been married? 28 years. I've committed it to memory. We're coming up on 29.
That's not my question, but I'm glad you know the number. So I don't mean to get you in trouble with her, but I'm going to ask this anyway, which is, do you have any celebrity crushes that you are willing to share with us? Anybody you've come across?
I don't think so. And I say that with all the sincerity in the world. I met my wife when I was 16 years old, so I've been locked in on her. She probably has some sort of celebrity crush.
Okay, all right.
But no, I'm locked in.
Understood.
I see what you tried to do there.
No, everybody gets the same question. So
I really couldn't think of any.
Okay, all right. Fair enough. Like I said, I'm not trying to cause any trouble.
What's so unusual for us is like, even our kids are like, Dad, how did you guys get married so young? I mean, we were 21. She graduated from college, and I got drafted, and so we got married right away. And it really did not seem abstract at the time. I mean, like, you didn't have any money. I was like, no, like, we didn't even think about that. Like, we just knew we could get work, and we just made it happen, and off we went.
Well, good. That's Congratulations.
Great. That's great.
Being able to stay married for a long time is an accomplishment.
Yeah.
Believe me.
I've got a needle point on my wall that says, getting married is easy, staying happily married is like a work of art or something like that.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Georgia's a big state. Campaigning all over the state has got to be grueling. So how do you take care of yourself? How do you attend to yourself on the campaign trail?
I sleep. I make sure a lot of this goes back to baseball. I make sure I get sleep, which isn't, it doesn't mean sleeping in, because it's the opposite. You got to get up so early. Just make sure I get to bed as early as possible. Sleep well, eat well. I have a little workout routine at the house that I put myself through. But a lot of this is mental, and you've got to keep the strength and the connectivity, and that's where my family really comes into play. When it's time to unplug and walk in the door with my wife and kids, it's kind of a no politics zone, and stay relaxed. Oftentimes, even as lieutenant governor, I know a lot of folks used to say, and would say to my wife, like, your life's going to change. Jeff's going to not be around. He's not going to be able to do things with the kids. And it wasn't the case, because early on, and I've done the same thing with the campaign, I've just set a pretty good set of guardrails around the family. Just said, these are some non-negotiable moments in time that my kids are not going to not have their dad there because dad's trying to beg for votes. It's like, maybe the Chick-fil-A policy. They could be open on Sundays if they wanted to, but they've chosen not to be.
Right.
And I don't think it's hurt their business. I'm a better candidate because I come mentally prepared and rested and physically ready to go. Like I said, I learned a lot of that just through my baseball days. If I walked off the baseball field and just talked about baseball every hour of every day back at the hotel or at my house, you'd be burned out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So any advice for someone looking to run for office?
I give this advice to everybody that's running for a state house or state senate seat or some sort of local district. The consultants will give you all the expensive ways to win the race. But the most effective way to win, I believe, is to knock on doors and make phone calls. Now, as a statewide race, that's a little hard to do. There's 11 million people to shake hands with. But on a local basis, knock on doors and make phone calls. I think back to and that was the advice somebody gave me when I ran for a state house seat out of nowhere. I never thought about politics. I was never in any sort of political circles. When I first ran for state house against essentially a longtime incumbent, somebody said, knock on doors and make phone calls. And that's what we did. We knocked on 4,000 doors in a state house district. We made 6,000 personal phone calls, me and my wife. And we won by 55 votes.
Wow.
And still to this day, in Forsyth County, we'll have folks at the grocery store come up and say, hey, you won't remember me, but you knocked on my door years ago in 2012 and asked me for my vote. And you said you were going to be a different kind of leader. And, even though you've switched parties, you are still a different kind of leader.
That's great. And it's really timely, because I feel like the advice from the national party is that canvassing doesn't work anymore.
For my microscopic lens says it does, and
Yeah.
I think especially at the local level.
And there's a candidate running for my state senate seat, and she went door to door, and I was like, that, and she was by herself, and she's like, I've ran through 3,000 of these cards. And I'm like, that is persistence.
We used to drive to a neighborhood, bring a box of push cards with us, divvy them up. I'd be on one side of the street. My wife and kids would be on the other side of the street. And we would just go door to door to door and knock on the doors. And the reason why we went on separate sides is because they always took longer. Because folks wanted to ask me individual policy discussions. So I would be like 10 houses behind them on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
They'd be like, catch up, catch up.
Yeah, I love that. That's great.
So, any advice for anybody considering a party switch?
Yeah, just follow your heart. I mean, do the right thing. Our family motto is doing the right thing will never be the wrong thing. That's the cornerstone. In fact, I showed that wooden coaster at the DNC when I spoke. And it just says, doing the right thing will never be the wrong thing. And for me, that was raising those 3 kids and teaching them the value of that. But, in the heat of the moment, that was the lesson that I took to heart, was doing the right thing will never be the wrong thing. And doing the right thing in that moment was standing up to Trump. But it's also following my heart on a number of these other issues. Look, not passing common sense gun legislation makes no sense in the world. That's the right thing to do. Expanding Medicaid is the right thing to do. We have the money, we have the need, let's go get it done. Repealing the heartbeat bill, demonizing somebody around the issue of abortion is the wrong thing to do. Demonizing and politicizing anybody around the transgender issue is the wrong thing to do. And so for me, the encouragement is just follow your heart. And look, there's probably good-hearted Republicans out there. I just, as far as the journey that I was on and the offices that I was in and I was seeking, I could not imagine squaring those ends on the policies that I support.
Understood. Well, as we get ready to wind down, Lieutenant Governor, we've got a couple more questions for you. So first one is this: if you win, if you're the next governor of Georgia, will you come back and join us sometime during your first year in office?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would love to. This has been a great conversation. You guys have great questions.
Oh, thanks.
Good.
These are not the standard boilerplate questions.
We try to make it interesting.
That's great.
Well, thank you. I will hold you to that, and it will be an honor to have you if you come back as the sitting governor of Georgia.
Great.
And I will afford you this opportunity. If you've got any closing comments for our audience or citizens of the state of Georgia that you want to share.
Well, it's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be on the show with you guys. But it's also an honor to be running for governor as a proud Democrat. It's an honor because I get to represent 11 million Georgians. I get to make this appeal for better public education, stronger public safety, better transit systems, more affordable housing and health care. I get to really do the things that most people need us to do. And so it's been an honor to pick up support all across the state and to really work hard. I think there's an interesting story that we get to tell here in Georgia. Georgia was the home of the civil rights movement, and the country followed our lead on that movement. I think we have an opportunity to get our politics right here in Georgia, too. I think it's not only about winning this election for Democrats and flipping this state for the first time in nearly 30 years. I think it's also giving the permission structure to the rest of the country to get it right, too, to follow our lead, to really hone in on those policies that really improve people's lives, to divorce ourselves from the deep-rooted partisan politics that just do more to divide than connect. And so I'm running for governor because I want to represent 11 million Georgians. I'm grateful for the support we've got. My ask is that you give me a shot, and I don't want to just earn your vote. I want to earn your trust. Website's duncanforgeorgia.com.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, for sharing your insights with us today. It was very informative. I hope it was a little bit of fun for you as well. We really appreciate you being here, and we wish you the best of luck on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. So, again, Emily, it's always great to share the foxhole with you.
Ditto.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you have any closing thoughts that you want to share?
Well, I do want to remind everybody that early voting opened this week.
Did.
So we have 20 days until Election Day, and so we've got big decisions ahead. We've had the opportunity now to interview 4 candidates for governor on the Democratic ticket, and I am grateful that we have such great candidates to choose from. And I know it's going to be a hard decision for a lot of people to make, but I appreciate and always welcome new members to the Democratic Party, but I really appreciate you leading the charge and following your heart and moving in the right direction. So thank you for running, and good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate the
All right.
opportunity.
Well, thank you, Emily. Thanks again to Reeves and Associates for sponsoring today's program. We appreciate them. And thanks again to the team right here at the Scottdale Podcast Cafe for doing such a great job in supporting our efforts. And for our audience, if you have any ideas about possible guests or future topics, please visit our website and drop us a note at servesomebodypodcast.com or via the normal social media platforms. Also note that our episodes are available on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. We understand that time is the most valuable resource that any of us have. So we sincerely thank you for spending some of your precious time giving us a listening ear. We will never take that for granted. These are indeed serious times, so until next time, just remember to think for yourself and don't fall for the show. Goodbye.
You're gonna serve somebody in a booth or on the street. You're gonna serve somebody. Every vote, every voice, every tweet might be the law, the dollar, or the folks who can't speak loud. You're gonna serve somebody. So say who you're serving now.